Alright, as much as possible, the goal is between today and Tuesday to get through Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. Much of the material in Chapter 8 we've already talked about. You may not realize it, but constants, handling forms, making forms sticky. We've talked about all that stuff already. I'm not going to hit on email because it won't work here. So we'll talk about output buffering, manipulating headers, and a couple of other things, but we should be able to do this hopefully in an hour. Then next week we'll go over Chapter 9, which is on cookies and sessions. And 2/3 cookies, 1/3 sessions. There's a lot more stuff in here, a lot more pages on cookies than there are on sessions. And then by a week from today, you'll get your next assignment. There's probably only going to be 1 or 2 problems. And one of them will be to take the thing that you did last time, that one of the forms or something, and just make it go to another page. Okay? We'll talk about that when we get to that point. All right, so I should have done that. All right. So as mentioned in here, to this point in the book, the first 7 chapters covered the fundamentals of programming with PHP, but now they're going to put stuff together and try to talk to you about things that you really should know as a programmer. So he starts by talking about creating templates, using external files, so there'll be includes and requires. I think we already know how to do constants, so I won't spend much time on that. A little bit of time on date and time, and then we'll get into this section here. All right, and some of the stuff that's in here, like I said, we won't really spend much time on it at all. Okay, I'm not sure why the author of this book does this, and maybe there's a much faster way than the way I've been doing it in the past, but just to show you this, what I've done is, on the machine that I have here, is I've gone in and taken all of his programs for Chapter 8 and have loaded them under htdocs. How many there's like 8 programs. Anybody want to take a wild guess? How many of those 8 work if you bring them up? How many people vote none? Yeah. Because he uses different names all the time. He names them one thing in the book, and then he names them another thing in in the folder, and then he goes and uses the book name, so you got to go back in there and change all that stuff. And I don't know why he does that. Like I said, for the life of me, I've been trying to figure out why, but so this is, you may have seen this before, so. All right, that works, but I don't know where the CSS files are, but they're definitely not in there. But if you look at some of these, they all either look like that, or they come up, there's errors in them. All right, so I'm going to see if I can fix that stuff, but I'm hoping that whatever it is fairly simple. But I went through most of them, and there wasn't one that was clean in the whole thing. Oh, that one did. Okay, because he showed the footer on there. So and so notice. All right, I'll see if I can fix that stuff as soon as I can. What it's supposed to look like is like this. If you see this, this is the bottom of page 184 in the book. In other words, it's got an H1 header here, raise high the roof beam. And there are links in here too that go to the different pages. All right, but like I said, none of it works right now. That's his template. But the idea is, what he's getting to on here is every page on the site will have pretty much the same heading and the same footer. Does that make sense? We've seen this in other classes. So what he says is, well, when you're doing all that stuff, why not just put it in there once and then basically include it in every single file? So that's what he does, is he creates the header file right here. He grabs this and he puts it into like a header.inc file, inc for include, bless you. And then what you can do then is you do the same thing with a footer. So you grab all the stuff at the bottom, put it into a footer.inc, sometimes footer.inc.php or whatever. But if you look up here, this is page 211 in the book, and what the author says right here is every page should have the same stuff on the top, should have the same copy right down at the bottom. Either is going to have a navigation over here on the side or a navigation underneath this top decorative row, and pretty much the area that's in here is going to be a content area. All right. So he said, then why don't we start doing it like that? And that's what he does. All right. I may or may not have talked about these before, but I am right now. All right. PHP allows you to bring other files into a program by using either a pound include or a pound require. And both pound include and pound require have an include once and a require once. The difference between these two things you see up on the screen right here that are in the blue is if you do a pound include, let's say I spelled file wrong. Instead of file, I wrote fill. Okay? So I wrote fill.php and the system can't find it. It gives me an error and it goes on. When you do an include, it gives you an error and it goes on. If it's a require, and if I put fill here instead of file, the program dies. So with an include, if there is an error, you get a warning message. With a require, if there is an error, the program tanks. Does that make sense as far as the difference between them? Include and include once, the difference between them is if you do an include once, the system will look to see if the file's already been included, and if it has been, it won't do it again. Now you would think, well, that makes sense, then I'm going to use include once. The recommendation is you keep including the file, you don't use include once, because for some reason with this package it really slows processing down. So what you're going to find is if you've got a database file, and with that database connection, if you don't have a database connection, you're dead in the water. You just use a require on that. This header, you know, the stuff that you saw right here, if you look one more time at this, all right, if I took all that stuff that you see in there that's gray, and if for some reason it didn't work, I still could have a web page and I could still do stuff. So I probably wouldn't use a require there, I'd probably use an include. So if you've got a file that you create, and if that file isn't there, or if it's spelled wrong, or if there's a problem with it, if the program can continue, you use an include. If the program cannot continue, so again, the database is the best example, you use a require. All right, if you keep that in mind, you'll be fine. What I'm going to do, I don't know if we're going to do it next week or not. When is your assignment due? Does anybody remember? Because I don't, for the life of me, have a clue. Now it's a race to see who can figure it out first, right? All right, there it is. It's due a week from today, October 9th, okay? And my hope is that everybody has it in then. All right, what I'm planning on doing with you sometime next week, and if I have to, then I'll do it the next Tuesday, I don't care. But I'm going to do the present value program for you. And what we're going to do is instead of having the results show right on that page, we're going to take all the information that's in that file and we're going to send it to another page. Does that make sense to you? So in other words, you'll have you know, your GUI. You fill in all the stuff in the GUI, you'll press the submit button, and instead of showing all the stuff on the screen like we have in the past, we'll take all that information, copy it to session variables, and send it to another page. All right, because that's what chapter 9's about. No, I still want you to do present value. That's why I said I'll wait and do it after it's due. I'm looking at it this way, that you had enough to assign. You had 5 problems assigned. That said, this one we did as a class. You typed all that one in, so you just have to fix that one. That was that fixing that form validation. The random number thing I did do for you. All right, so that one's out there. The prime number one, I think I did that one. No, that one you got to do. The Joe's one we did as a class. So you've got, on these 5 problems, number 1 is mostly done. Number 2 is done. Number 4 is done. So you really have to just concentrate on 3 and on 5. All right. Again, when I did mine, I showed you this before, but I'm just going to show it to you one last time. literally, I grabbed from the in-class folder, I grabbed that 929, not that one, 99. This one, this test file, remember the one we did as a class? I literally grabbed this file just to show you this. And time me, it's 309, okay? So I'm copying it. All right, in fact, I'm going to change, I'm going to copy it right here. And now I want to grab that one. Test copy, because I don't have anything on my C drive that's called test copy. Because I went from the non-virtual side. So that's the one I just made the copy of right there. So it's 310, copy. And I'm pasting it right there onto my htdocs. All right, I'm going to change the name of this to future value. Okay, and I'm going to open it up. Right now, of course, it doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing. All right, this is the one that we did as a class where we had the different website and all that other stuff. So right now, if I run this, it looks like this. Remember that? Okay. But notice, I can come in here and just literally how fast. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a couple errors. All right. I'm going to say empty error. No value put in text box. All right. Non-number error. Non-numeric value put in text box. Negative error. All right. Negative number put in text box. Okay. And I'm going to just call this, in fact, I'm not going to put that in there. I'm just going to leave all the rest of them for now. I'm just going to leave them. All right. So if I come through here, well, what do I care about? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to go back in here and I'm trying to remember, so give me a second. All right, so what do we have in here? So we've got the amount of money we're investing, we've got the percentage rate, and we've got the number of years, correct? So we've got those three things, okay? Still, it's 312. So I'm going to come back in here and just start changing this stuff. So amount invested. All right. And we'll just call it amount. Okay, well, and this will end up being called amount error. Okay. All right, so that's the first one. And then we're going to have the percentage that I'm just going to call PCT for percentage. And it'll be of type text. What's that? Yes. Yes, thank you. And the name should be PCT. Thank you. All right. All right, so we've got the amount invested, the percentage, and years. All right, and I don't need anything else in here. So all that stuff. I don't need that. right, so literally right now, when you look at everything that I've just done in 4 minutes, I'm going to save this, I'm going to come back to this. All right, now my interface is done, right? I mean, I still have to fix these errors and stuff, but what I'm saying is that's all it took, was 3 minutes to take that file that we already had, all right, and set it up like this. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I have to sit there and think about, okay, well, what kind of validation do I want to do? Again, it can be empty, it can be non-numeric, and it can be negative. Well, I also said those two things I had. I'm going to have what? Amount error. And I'm just going to set that equal to the empty string. And I'm going to have, there was years, and there's percentage error, PCT error. I'm going to set that equal to this, and I'm going to have, so I've got the amount and I've got years. All right, so I come in here and I say, I don't even need this test input thing. If I want to, I can keep it because we had that before, so I can do it like that. That's fine. All right, so what are we doing? Well, we have to test the amount. And if it's not numeric, and that was what? No, that's non-number error. All right. So right there, I've done all my tests already for my amount. Okay? And all I'm trying to show you is we did all that, all right, and you can see how it's getting fixed, so to speak. All right? But the point is, what did I do? I spent 5 minutes. And I created an error because it's possible I didn't put anything in there. And if I didn't put anything in there, I can use that for this, or this, or this. Correct? They're all numeric fields. All right? And if they put something non-numeric in there, I can again use that for this, and this, and this. And finally, if they put a negative number in, I can again do the same thing. All right, so if I wanted to be really cheaty, that's not the right word, but just so you know, I can come in here and do this. I can grab all that stuff that I just did, copy it to the clipboard, come down to here. And paste. All right, so there's the amount. Then all these here have to be changed to PCT. So that one's done. I thought I did all three, but maybe I only put it in once. So there's this. Okay, there's the second one. Paste it again. All right, and the last thing that's in there is years. again, hopefully I didn't make any mistakes, but the point is I'm less than 10 minutes. All right, and I'm looking at that, so maybe I did screw something up in there. Do you see how fast you can fix that? All right, I literally, in 10 minutes, I've got my interface built, and the only thing I will have to worry about, I guess I do have to add a thing down here that says amount. All right, so not the amount invested, but the total amount or whatever. All right, but if you give me 5 more minutes, I'm not going to do it now. I could have the program done. Now, that's not really fair because I've been doing this a lot longer than you. But what I'm saying is, I gave you that test one that you could use as a template. You can use it as a template for just about all of these. All right. All right. When you do include files, they look like this. Whether it's include or whether it's a require. You don't have to use the parentheses either if you don't want to. They're not required. Most of the time people seem to, but you don't have to. And you literally, what that's doing is that says at this spot in my PHP program, throw in the header text. At this spot in my PHP program, same thing, but throw in the footer text. What you're going to start seeing in this next chapter is something like this, something like you see up here on page 215 in the book. We're going to start giving some structure to this as we start to create sites. We're going to not just throw everything together. I've started doing this before with you already. We had the CSS in a different folder, etc. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to do even more of that. All right. So the idea is when you do that, this is what it should look like. Okay, and notice there is a books link, a stories link, a quotes link, a login link, and a register link in here. But the idea is you'll have this on every page, and you'll have whatever you have for the footer on every page. Okay. Constants, I don't think we probably don't have to go over these. We've looked at constants before, so just real quickly, and because like I said, I don't want to waste your time on this stuff. But by now, when you see this, you should know when you declare a constant like this, you have to, in the declaration, you have to put it in single or double quotes, the name. After that, you never use it in single or double quotes. So now, everywhere I use pi in a program, it's going to replace it with 3.14. Everywhere I use currency in a program, it's going to replace it with euros. All right? I've given you several programs already where we've used constants. So again, if I was going to do another thing in here for BMI or something like that, I might say something like define overweight 25, because anybody who's got a BMI of over 25 like me is overweight. Underweight, and that was 18.5. So now in my program, when I use them, I use just the word overweight without the quotes, or just the word underweight without the quotes. Okay? All right. Date and time, there's a lot of different stuff you can do with date and time. If you look up on the screen here, also in your book on page 221, these are the different ways that you can format the date. Notice, for example, that a lowercase d and an uppercase d have two different meanings. All right. Lowercase y and an uppercase y have two different meanings. Uppercase y means give me all 4 digits, so we get 2014. Lowercase y, you just get the 14. Okay? We're not going to be that concerned with this, period. PHP has got a lot of built-in date functions, so as always, if I go out here and I type in PHP Date Functions, it's going to push me to the manual page, and there are the date functions. Somewhere probably in the vicinity of 20. Okay. Sticky forms, we've already looked at this. In fact, I was just looking at Teresa. She's already done this. If is set $post, $_post. You've already been doing this. I tried to teach you doing it the right way to begin with. he mentions if you don't want to do that, you can have a hidden field in there and you can check it. I think that's, I don't know what the advantage of doing that is. So what we've been doing, again, since the get-go, since day one in here, is you've been, I don't know what that's doing. That's interesting. This is it. Nifty. Okay. But we've been using, now I can't show you that one because of the way that just looked. So if $_server request method equals post. Literally that means if you click the submit button. So you've already seen that. Okay, here's an example of a constant right here. Underneath it is an example of an include. Two of the things we just were talking about. Okay, check to see if the form has been submitted right here. Then when you start going through and doing some validation, here's checking for empty. And I've already just showed you on the program that I just went over with you the future value, how you can check for other things. Did we talk about this in class? I'm asking you because I don't know what's in blue. Did we look at Htmlspecialchars? I don't remember, but in case we didn't, so if I come up here and say Htmlspecialchars, it converts special characters into their HTML entity form. So for instance, if I ask somebody to put a comment in, and instead of writing in a comment, they decide they're going to see if they can do this. You know this, we've talked about this in other classes, that if I do this, and I put that into an HTML text area, and the system puts it in, and it allows it to be put in there, and it comes up and it says, hello, I'm host. Because now I'm opening myself up for different types of cross-site scripting types of errors. So if I use the special chars, that changes it so it now looks like ampersand less than script ampersand greater than. All right, so it changes this to this. That's what Htmlspecialchars does. Never hurts to do that, especially when you're putting information into a database or someplace where it's mandatory that you put it in, and it has to be put in there correctly. Sticky. Does this make sense to everyone if you look at the stuff that's in blue right here? What this is saying is the value of the field that's called first name. Check and see if there's already a value in it. If there is, then print it, then show it on screen. You know, keep it sticky. And if there's not a value in there, don't do anything. All right? That's what stickiness is. So the idea is you screwed up here, but you left the last name off. But everything else you put in stays in here because those fields were all sticky. All right? You can choose to make any or all fields sticky if you want to do so. Email I'm skipping. We can't do that here because of the way our servers are set up, so I'll just skip that. All right. Even if you haven't been listening, please listen for the last couple pages that are in the chapter, because this is the most important part. All right, so this is output buffering. It looks like it starts on page 242 in the chapter. And not 242. 222 in the chapter. All right, and the chapter, so it starts on page 222, and the chapter itself ends on page 230. So it's about 7 or 8 pages. All right. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. In the next couple classes, we're going to be working with cookies, and we're going to be working with sessions. When you work with cookies and you work with sessions, They have to be at the top of your PHP program. You can't do anything before them. You can't print out any HTML or do anything like that. If you try, you get an error message that says, headers already sent. One way that you can get around that is you can use what's called output buffering. So notice what the author has done here. This is at the beginning of that header file. The author put in OB start, which means anytime you see any HTML that's supposed to be printed, print it, instead of printing it on the screen, print it to a buffer. And then when the program is done, and you'll see that at the end, we put in our footer OB end flush, which means now flush the buffer. So now print it out. Again, I'm going to go through an example with you next week where we're going to do this. So you'll see it. The last thing that's discussed in here, again, we may have talked about this before. If I put this on a page, if you look up on the screen at what's in blue, if I put that on a page, that's like a go-to. That says wherever I am in whatever page I'm on, get rid of that page and load up page.php. And it's in your book, but if you look right here, if you do that and you send a person off to another page, put an exit underneath it. Because what happens is it goes to this page, and when it gets done, it jumps back to the page it was on. So by saying exit, it makes sure that it gets you off the page. You know what? That's actually it for the chapter. Now, I did that unbelievably quick, a lot faster than I thought I would. So we're going to take more time next week going over chapter 9. All right? Rest of the period's yours.